Welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast, where two unlikely CEOs come together and rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a CEO stylist. Yovanka and Kirsten Harris are on a mission, giving stylists permission to join the movement of artists breaking the mold of what is meant to be for the hair industry and creating the life and schedule of their dreams. Fast forward through many failed attempts and lessons learned in the process, it's time to level up the playing field. It's time to call BS on what's been done before. Yovanka and Kirsten are ready to share it all, defying the odds of the industry and teaching you how to do the same.
Hello, we're back for another episode. How are you, Kirsten?
I am fabulous, and we're coming to you from our offices today. How amazing.
I know we're not in our podcast studio, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see what we're talking about. But if you're listening to us, we just got a little bit of a different setup today, which we love our new podcast room, but we're trying out this new cool little podcast thing that we can check in every other week. So Kirsten doesn't have to come all the way down to our podcast. It's a nice treat to do it this way, isn't it?
Yep, love it. I love it. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, before we get into talking about our hot topic for today, I really wanted to also just touch base because we're both coming down off our podcast launch, which was a couple of nights ago. So I figure we should just touch on that because we're both come home feeling the love for everyone. And we just wanted to give a big shout out to everyone who came out to support us. What a great turnout of event.
Do you know what I loved about it? Like that, I definitely felt the love. I think that's what we shared. The love and support in that room was overwhelming really for both of us. But just walking around the room, and there was so many different people from different groups, yet the commonality amongst some was incredible. I don't know whether that's an Adelaide thing or the communities that we attract between us, but it was so freaking awesome to see.
I was getting messages saying, oh my God, like everyone, I feel like everyone since COVID has tried to avoid maybe socializing as much, and they're feeling somewhat a little bit of anxiety over it. I know myself, like most people think that I'm this social butterfly, but I really have a hard time socializing when it's outside of my comfort zone. So I definitely feel that. But it was just so great to see, and everyone that's, given us feedback has said the same thing, like they left feeling on a high, like they didn't feel drained by socializing and the group. It was just such a beautiful crowd.
Yeah, loved it. But thank you for those in Adelaide that could attend our event. We thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. It's
thank you. And to everyone that's already sent messages of listening to our first podcast and the feedback and observation, everyone was so gracious. So we're just excited to keep opening up conversations around topics that matter. And, I'm so excited about our conversation for today and our topic for today, which is a big thing that I've been wanting to share for so long, and it's feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback is what we need to talk about today. And I think feedback is also, quite broad. It can be quite broad like marketing, but I think we're just going to break it up in two sections because there's feedback that's more related to client stylist feedback, which we will get into, but then there's also feedback for staff and team members as well. So we'll break it up.
And people in general, right?
100%. And relationships. We might have to break this up over, a few different podcasts because we both have so much to say on this topic. But I think let's kick it off first and let's start speaking about the client stylist feedback because, you've owned salons before, you've owned businesses, but I think the client salon feedback is a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Such a personal experience for clients. And I think also me being in the position that I'm in, we also get a lot of feedback from clients who go see stockers. So not only do I have to, have that feedback, a solid feedback culture in place for our salon, it has to be a solid culture in place for our stockers as well, which I'll get into. But I think, even now more so with feedback, I feel like clients, and, this is really great for any clients who are also listening, not to be so afraid of feedback. I think feedback as a whole has such a negative context to it. And I think also receiving it and delivering it as well, because it's also how it's received and how it's delivered can play a big part, how the person's going to hear the feedback.
So let's unpack it. So when you're obviously talking about feedback, so we're going to paint a scenario. You're talking about a client's had a service in a salon and it hasn't met her expectations, and they've provided feedback to either the stylist, the manager, the business in general. What you want to talk about now is how it's interpreted, how it's managed in house.
Yeah, and how it's delivered, and then how it's reciprocated.
Right. Okay. Let's go. So client's given the feedback to the salon. She's not happy.
So she's not happy. In saying that, I do have to also say this is part of feedback where clients also are afraid to give the feedback. So they might not do it to that client. They'll do it to someone else. And then you don't even know that you've received that feedback.
So true.
Feedback, remember, people get weird and they get defensive with feedback on both parts. But just to paint a picture, in the past, it just shouldn't be weird is what I'm saying. I feel like it just needs to be addressed like, hey, this is what I've experienced. Keep it short, sweet, and simple, because what people need to realize as well is, as a stylist, they're so passionate about what they do. They care whether it's a stylist or whether it's any other business, whether it's client-based, everyone really genuinely cares about what they're doing. So if a client is, in their emotions about it, and this is what happens, I know it's happened to us before that clients get frustrated, which is absolutely understandable, right? So they're coming from frustration. They're not always understanding that, things can go wrong, even though that a stylist during their service should be able to create that culture that's open to feedback. So for example, when we're doing our work, we always set it off to our clients. Please make sure if there's anything ever wrong, I think that's the first thing that needs to be spoken about while you're with the client, to send them the invitation to let them know and guide them. If there is ever any issues, here's the way that you can get in contact with me, whether it's a DM, whether it's message, guide them, direct them. That's why it's really important with email marketing as well, to let them know what is the best way.
So you're saying no matter how long that client's been with you, there should be an open door invitation to, at any point in time, if they're dissatisfied with something, to give feedback.
100%.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Is there a time frame? Is there a considered, like in your view, I knew I had some rules around this when I owned salons, but is there a time frame post service that it's acceptable or not acceptable?
Well, with hairdressing, it's a little bit different, because in order to fix something, we have policies in place, whether they're new or not. Usually if there's something wrong, you need to let us know within 7 days so we can rectify, right? Yeah. But sometimes, clients will go 2-3 months, they'll think that there's something wrong, and then out of the blue, 3 months, they're, messaging you that something's wrong, and you're like, well, you never even gave us a chance to fix it.
Yeah, or they've gone off somewhere else because they don't know how to
come to you. So in going back, just to answer your question, it doesn't matter how long the client's been coming to you, because someone like us who, we are experts in our field, but being an expert doesn't mean that, like, to me, you're a forever student. So if you're an expert, you're always trying new things. Someone like myself, who's always evolving and who's always growing, I'm never doing the same thing on a client, very rarely.
You did something new to me last week.
Exactly, because I'm always, I get bored really easy.
Yeah.
I think also, as a really high-performing creative stylist, I'm always growing and evolving. So some things are not going to work out. So I've always got that open dialogue with my clients.
Yeah. And I got that, like my own experience with you. You tried something new and you made it very clear in that moment. If it doesn't work and you don't like it, let me know. And it was really about placement, right?
100%.
Yeah.
But here's the thing also, I think with what's going on, and, in the world and with people, I think, people, this is our new favorite word, they ruminate.
Yeah.
Or something else is going on in their life. So when they come back, and we've had it happen, not a lot, because clients are very respectful, because I feel like we've built very solid system and processes in place to avoid that from happening, but they still get caught up in their emotions. And it happens, and they message, and they, if they keep it short and sweet, I always say to my girls in the beginning when we had customer service, just to give you an example, there was one, her thread or her beads would, kept coming out. So to her, I didn't know at that point, but she was going through some major, major issues. And her message, her paragraph was very, very defensive, was very, she wasn't, because there's a fine line with, disrespect. She wasn't disrespectful at all. And I just train my girls, it doesn't matter what they're going, our job is to diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't know what people are going through.
You don't know. And I always come out, and when you work on yourself, And
Yeah.
when you know that you try your best, it shouldn't trigger you.
Yeah.
But
I actually read something about this. I'm just digressing for a minute on someone that's a well-known social media influencer. I literally read on her socials last night and her stories about, and it was along the lines of feedback or when people are giving comments, don't take it personally because we don't know. They could have had a miscarriage. They could have just lost a loved one. They could be in an abusive relationship. We never know.
you never know.
And we put so much meaning attached to the delivery instead of just diffusing it.
100%.
Yeah.
And this is someone coming who's an artist. So I think what happens is because it's so personal and because we all try so hard. So when it happens, artists just automatically deflect and get defensive. And I've
Yeah.
noticed it in my whole career, and it triggers even in the back room. We've really had to pull ourselves in, rein ourselves in, be like, no, message that client. Doesn't matter how long they've been, what's happened, always offer them understand, validate what they're going through, just validate what they're going through and try to come across, well, not try to come across, but you need to be open minded that what they're going through and give them an invitation to always come back. Like you're always going to fix it.
So regardless of what it is, you want your agenda in that moment is to get them back into the salon.
Get them back into the salon.
Not like make them wrong about, or you should have told me, or that's not what you said. Just get them in.
100%. And I
Right.
see this a lot. We've gotten so many feedback with stockers, which I'll get into. And, stylists, if, this is going back to what we said on another podcast, when they're in their ego, they're not going to actually hear what the client's saying. Right? Imagine in Anfield, they're spending a shitload of money, right? And even if not, it's part of a service industry where you've got to be open and willing. Hey, I'm so sorry that's happened. I understand what you're going through. Let's find a time suitable for you and let's get you back in so we can assess it. It's just short and simple and sweet. Now, here's where I feel like it can go a little bit wrong.
Right. Well, this will be interesting.
You've been privy, a couple of years ago. It was a younger girl. It doesn't matter who this younger girl was, but this is where it becomes a repeat offender situation, because if someone's also not in a good space and you're fixing it, but it becomes a repeat offender situation where you're really trying every which way and still after the third time, it's you cannot make it right for this person. Then you got to really, really figure out, is it something that you're doing or is there a fine line in the sand where maybe this person, it just doesn't matter what you do, they're just not a right fit.
Yeah, they're never going to be happy.
They're never going to be happy. And we've had a couple of them. And also what happens is when they're in that anxiety mode and they go home, and this particular scenario, this client was emailing at odd hours, like 9, 10 o'clock, midnight. She just didn't stop and kept writing paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. And it was demanding when we had to fix it, because we would always write back. We, set boundaries in place. We don't answer our phone after hours. That's fine. But then when we would get back, we would just send her some times when we're available. And she just kept going and going and going. And that's where we have to really set boundaries. And it took me a minute to realize how to do that, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get in a war and peace battle over text messages when it's that raw.
And it's always difficult if they refuse to come back in. And I think if it's the scenario that I remember, I don't think she wanted to come back in either.
Oh, no, this one particular one
wanted to come in. Okay.
She did. So what happened? I just picked up the phone, and in the midst also, the girls are stressing out. The salon, other clients can hear it because she's ruminating it and she's going on about it, and it just becomes this thing that it really shouldn't be. And then she made one of the girls cry. And it was just, it becomes a little bit of a power play, or there's something deeper going on, right? So that
we never know. Yeah.
And I hadn't appointed a manager at that point. So I just picked up the phone and I said, listen, lovey, we love you. I said, but, I need to unpack something with you, and this is where it stands. You're more than welcome to give us feedback. But when you're sending multiple messages and you're also demanding when we can fix it, it's not going to work. I love you. You're a sweet girl. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like my girls or we can make you happy. So we're more than welcome. We won't be upset if we end our relationship amicably, and then you might have to find another stylist that's better suited to you.
Interesting. So your message in all of this is for stylists and salon owners to always be open to feedback. Give that invitation up front. It shouldn't be like a reverse engineered situation. It should be after the fact, or they're finding out 3 months down the track when they've lost a client. Because I'm going to put my marketing hat on for a minute here, right? And go, I know what it takes to win a client for the first time. Businesses spend a lot of money acquiring the acquisition path of acquiring a new client. So it always blows my mind when, we've got this far, we've bought that client, whether or not it's through paid ad campaigns or any other platform that you're getting to attract those clients, and they're not making it easy for them to come back, or, making that path of dissatisfaction easy for them to share with their stylist or without. Because I've witnessed situations, had conversations with salon owners, even in my hat, with Blow Dry Bar or many salons, and the common thread was the deflection and trying to make the client wrong, or she said, or she's a bitch, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
and
she was having a bad day. That's not the photo. And I always came back to, there must have been something wrong in the consult. To aim, fire, you've misguided, you've misinterpreted, whatever it is. But I always came back to, there must have been a communication breakdown in the consult. You didn't ask enough questions, and that's essentially what it is, right? Communication.
So that's such a solid place of consultation.
So I'm like, foster those clients, like nurture them. If you don't want them in your business, I think there's a whole nother podcast we might do one day on how to fire a client nicely. But I know just how much businesses invest in that acquisition.
Let me just finish with this client. This was a red flag, and it's happened a couple of times when it goes into that weird space.
Yeah.
If you can't get that client back on board, you have to really, really assess who you need to hold on to and who you sometimes don't have to hold on to.
Yeah, sure. So how do you then, on the flip side, because it's hard for a stylist to get that feedback, they're very proud, those that they love and adore working with hair. How then do you safeguard your team when they're getting that feedback? How do you nurture that?
It's just perspective, right? It always, like you always say, everything comes down to perspective. I think as artists, if you see it as an opportunity, I always say to the girls, you have to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Okay. Then do you guide that and go, is there a gap in their education process that you need to revisit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always. And you've seen me in action when it comes to feedback, and you've watched me, you've witnessed me, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that. I just go into solution and survival mode.
Yeah.
I don't take it personal. I'm always like, no problem. Like, we'll fix it. This is what we do. This is, something that it's such a personal, color chemistry, beading, section. There's so many things that come into it. And the first time, which, like you're saying, comes back to consultation. It's more like with first clients. You're still trying to figure out what's going to suit them, what's going to work for them, their head shape, their placement. There's so many factors that come into it. And I really, really do believe it has to have you have to have a solid consultation in process, but you have to have a solid follow-up. So with saying that, our follow-up system, after they leave, they not only receive an email for feedback for Google, but we also send them a personal, and this will mitigate a lot of things from, going into that weird zone, because we send them a personal message follow-up a week after their appointment. Doesn't matter how many times they've been here or
they
what
get. Yeah. And, all good point of sale systems will have that option in place where they can do that trigger email post service. Sure. So let's come back, because it was always like my experience with this, when there was a dissatisfied client, whether or not they came through DMs, email, phone, and you have a reasonable team, and I've run reasonable sized teams. It's like there's inherently one person, one stylist responsible for that client. And so I guess this is a roundabout way of saying, how do you safeguard them? Because it's not something that remains sacred between you as the salon owner and that employee. Inevitably, the whole salon team knows about that one client that's not happy. And it can be a bit mortifying and embarrassing when you're so proud of your work. So how do you manage that?
Interesting that you say that. So from first induction, I've created this culture where my thing is, if you don't know how to accept feedback, I honestly don't know if we're the right salon for you.
Right.
But I say I've very embedded in my culture from day one. So when it does happen, and you've seen my girls in action, the girls, we all work, and even I'm the CEO. When I go in the salon, I don't have a title.
Yeah.
No titles in there. So we all have worked really well. When there's an issue or there's ever been an issue, we all chip in to help each other. There's no weird feeling. And I've just had a new staff member, start with me a couple of months ago, and she was like, "What the hell is happening? Like, this does not happen in salons," because it was so weird. And before, it was that ego built up in stylists, so that if someone complained, the theory behind it was whoever didn't get it right, the stylist would have to fix it, because if they went to someone else, God forbid, that stylist would be even more devastated, even more embarrassed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas we just don't have that here. So I think it's important to embed it in your culture if you can from the day dot. And like you say, it's always perspective. At the end of the day, over yourself, it's not about you, it's about the client.
Exactly. And I think if anyone, the underlying message for me in that is from a salon owner's perspective, when you're managing a team and that happens, there's a learning in there for everyone. And it's kind of like that reminder to go, this is what we're doing as artists. We are, that you're seeing clients as a hairdresser, you're seeing clients every day, all day, every day. That client sitting in your chair is only seeing you once every 6, 8, 12, maybe even longer, 20 weeks. Some women go 6 months, depends on lifestyle, affordability, all of that. So they get excited. I get excited. I still get excited, right? I've been on both sides. They get excited about being in your chair. So it is hard from a client's perspective when you walk away and go, shit, that didn't land. Like, that's not what I expected.
And in text message, you're never going to get your point across. That's why it's an invitation to anyone out there. Keep feedback off messaging, off emails. You can say, hey, can we have, or I'm not happy about this. Can we speak about it? And this is where I get protective, because I'm an advocate for artists. When an artist is on the floor doing what they're doing, they're servicing their clients, they don't have this ping pong energy to go back and forth between, unless, because not every salon has a salon coordinator, right?
No.
Let's just bring that takes time and effort to build to that.
Yeah.
That we have that. But when you're an artist on the floor and you're servicing clients, you need to set those clear boundaries. You don't have the energy or the capacity to go back and forth with the client trying to debate what's happened, what hasn't happened. So this is where it's another invitation to both parties to keep it short and sweet. As long as the stylist knows what they need to fix, they can then accommodate that client to be booked in. But it should be spoken about face to face.
Yeah, I like that. Well, this is a good segue then to flip to the other side, and let's talk about feedback when you're managing teams. Yeah. So you've got employees, and we all need feedback. And I've got a fair bit to say about this. Like, it's not just related to salons, but it's running businesses in general. I guess I want to preface it by saying any person in a leadership role, this is not a choice. If you want to be a good leader in your business, you have to learn to develop a muscle to give feedback. 100%. It's not about being a shit person, but good leaders need to give feedback. And I'll explain why I say it like that. It's one, you're then from the receiver's perspective, when you're giving feedback to the receiver, in this case, because we're going to flip to employees or staff, they then know you're taking notice of them. So you're already investing your time in taking notice of what they're doing. So because you're about to give them feedback about something. The other thing is from a business and a management, and it takes a team to run businesses in most of the time. If it's not communicated, how does anyone know to fix it?
That's right.
Because they ruminate. We love that word, right? Ruminate, whether or not you're an employee and you've been given feedback, or you're a leader or employer in this case, and you're not giving the feedback.
It builds up over time.
How does anyone fix it? So let's flip to that and unpack this one, because it's a big one, because I believe everyone needs feedback. It's why us as business owners and leaders, we also seek for feedback and guidance, which is why inevitably people employ business coaches and mentors for the same thing, because they're not to blow smoke up your ass and tell you you're amazing. They're going to pull you up.
It's critical feedback to make you better, to make you grow, not hurt you.
Yeah. But I'm like, my message to our to our listeners is you have to develop a muscle. This is not a choice thing. If you want to be in control of your business every day, you need to develop that muscle for feedback, because it's good, the bad and the ugly. Like
It's also, and in saying this is something that I've really had to work on, it's how you deliver it. So if you don't address it, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to build up and build up, and then one day you're going to explode it. And the poor staff member is going to be like, what the hell just happened?
exactly,
You delivered it to me, but it doesn't matter how you deliver it on a silver platter.
because you've waited for months for it to happen before you're about to fire them.
And and I know what hairdressers are like, because when you're dealing with clients and pressure, and then you've got businesses and you've got kids, and you're going to be percolating outside. So what do you think is going to happen when you go to that staff member and they feel that energy, and they're just going to shut down and be completely defensive, and they're going to deflect? And I've been privy to it too. Don't think that I didn't have to learn the hard way, because I did. And every time I did it, I kicked myself for it.
Yeah.
And to really sit back and be like, oh, that didn't end well. Or what can I do? If I really want to be a leader and I want to manage teams, I really need to get my shit together.
So can I talk to you about how because this is something very passionate to me, and in my roles, I've had team all over Australia, right? So it's not like they're out the front of your office and you can visually see. I've had teams where they're on the road and they're front facing with franchisees or other business owners. So, and everyone needs feedback, performance management feedback, So my method, and it's how I teach people as well now, it's called the shit sandwich method to feedback. So the shit sandwich is this. So we're going to preface it by saying we need to sit down and have a conversation to check in. And then there's nothing wrong. You don't want to catch people by surprise with this. You've got to become prepared. But the shit sandwich is if your intention of that meeting is to give them something that they need to work and improve on, you start with something that they're good at. I like how you did this and what you're doing in my business, and this is how it makes me feel, or this is the impact that you're making in the business. Mm-hmm. Rule number 1 is I like what you do. The shit in the middle is, but this is what I've noticed, and this is a problem in our business because of. So don't make it personal. It's about it's the action, not how it makes you feel. This is what the issue is that I can see, that we need to figure out a solution. And this is what I want you to work on, or you figure it out together and come up with a solution. So it's literally that shit sandwich. And it is like, I want people to really try that and use that. That's how I've taught this, how I've taught it in my leadership roles is, if you're going to give anyone feedback, just remember the shit sandwich method. You come out and sit someone down and go straight out, boom, I hate what you do here. This is how you're going to catch them off guard, and the conversation is going to end wildly wrong on all levels. So that's how I've always done it. I've never, it's like a fail proof. It's not my creation. It's something I read many, many years ago, and I've always used that philosophy. It's a really simple one for anyone to remember, the shit sandwich method to feedback, and it works all the time.
I agree. Asking what,
the how.
That's the what, and if they understand it always goes back to the what and the why of why you're doing it. And I've implemented that too as well, and finding out where they're coming from, because even with staff, you might be perceiving that they don't care, or you've got your own idea of what's not happening or what they're doing, but there's always a reason behind it. And once you get down to the bottom of the reason, if you approach it in the right way, I've seen magic happens with it. With my kids, with my staff, they're a lot more open to it. They're a lot more open to accepting, the feedback. It really ends up being a gift, and they really do see it that way if it's approached the right way, rather than, handling it in such an upset, aggressive, you're never going to get the results.
Yeah.
And you end up, ruining relationships. And there is also that element these days. I think, a lot of people feel this. We hear it from a lot of business owners that the younger generation are just really, doesn't matter how you deliver feedback. There's some, and we've both had them in our teams, that, this is also where it gets back to victim mindset. And then I have to draw a line in the sand. And I know you and I have both had conversations about it, because, good feedback is taken, you find a solution, you move on. But then when it becomes an issue that it's something that it's not, and we've both had this happen, where then they become, they're just so they hang on to it and they bring up things from other situations, and then it becomes drama, right? And this is where it can become really toxic, because you're
Yeah.
like, well, how did we just go from here to there? Because they just shut down. And again, I've done it in beautiful settings where, come at it with love and, understand, why we're saying what we're saying, explain it, go back to our why, this is the direction that we're going in. And then they get so hurt and they're so, they can't regulate their emotions of it. And they, like I said, it becomes into something it's not. And I've had to let staff go because of it. So at the end of the day, you and I both have that same leadership and management style, where I always say to my team, you always know where you stand with me. You always know where you stand. Would you rather a leader, and we've both been in toxic environments where you don't have a say, where the leader will not tell you what they're thinking, they'll go tell everybody else, then they'll ignore you. And it just causes, to me, that is so much more toxic.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
that's why I always say, I've had to, speak to plenty of staff before. I'm like, would you rather that? Like, if you don't appreciate that, I'm so honest and you know where you stand with me, I've got your back. This is the thing. When something goes wrong, you'll be the first one to know. But guess what? I'll also have your back. I'll be the first one to have your back when shit goes wrong.
See it. And I've seen you in action that way. But so the underlying message is, it is all about communication. So let's take this out of the business environment and talk about people in your life. And so one thing I learned a long time ago from a business leader who's a global public speaker. He's amazing. He's so inspiring. His name's David T.S. Woods. And he taught, he was on stage one day and he was talking about the rules of life, the rules, like the game of life and the rules we play. And he had a very profound message back then that really landed with me about treatment. And, it is about giving feedback. When if you don't like the way you're being treated, then you have to give that feedback, because it's the rules of the game. So it goes a bit deeper than treat people how you want to be treated, because he said that's bullshit, because people don't play that game.
Right. And you've got to
give people feedback about, if you don't like something about how someone's treating you or what they've said, and you don't give that feedback, it just manifests into something, multiplies into something.
Can I just add on something? Because you've been in our salon where we have so much banter, between the girls, but there's been times that banter has gone overboard.
Yeah.
And we have a rule, like if someone crosses that line, just pull us aside and tell us and we'll squash it.
Yeah.
And that's happened as well, because if we didn't and we kept it going, then like you say, it hinders relationships on all forms.
Well, right? So how do you handle this, like outside of a business environment?
So you've seen me in action as well. And I think I've really learned over the last few years to really set the tone with my relationship. So if someone's, going to be in my circle on my word, I'm like, here, this is how it is. This is how I am. These are the pros. Here's the cons. And I'm very, very open about setting that framework for feedback at the end of the day. And we both just came back from Bali. And here's what, this is not the type of friend that I am. Like if someone is close to me and I love them and I respect them and I want the best for them, I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and enable them while they're saying something that I don't believe or agree with. If I can see that they're a harm to themselves, because everyone can have a bad day, right? We've all had bad days. Clients can have bad days. Staff can have bad days. And that's okay. We can work through that. But one thing is a non-negotiable for me is when people are talking about the same fucking shit 6 months later.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And this is where my friendships would sometimes be really straightforward, because I was always the one to speak up about it. And you've seen me, I'm never aggressive, it's never out of sort, but something will come up where I'll be like, well, hey, have you thought maybe about doing this, or giving them feedback? And then they just get demented over it. And they just can't cope, because again, the truth hurts.
It's a quality I admire though, because not everyone's brave enough in their social and their personal circles to give feedback.
It's
for
true.
Fear of not being liked, not being
a really analogy, and it's probably a stupid example, but say someone's got something stuck in their teeth and I'll watch and I'm like, no one will tell this person that they've got something stuck in their teeth, but I'm always the one saying it. And then I'm like, you saw that she's got something stuck in the teeth. Why didn't you tell her? They're like, well, I didn't want to offend her or embarrass her. I'm like, do you realize you're actually embarrassing her more by not saying something? And I think feedback, look, we can get real deep, but I do think it comes back down to, I see it a lot. Most families, most upbringings, people just sweep things under the rug.
Too much, don't they?
So what is going to happen in adulthood?
Well, and then they resort to text message, and then it just turns into like a shit show, doesn't it? Instead, because people are too frightened to speak up and use their voice. They're okay doing it in a business environment sometimes, but they'll let their personal life turn to shit. So, but I just feel like if you draw a line in the sand and go, this is the way I want to live my life and be treated.
Yeah. And the thing with feedback, because, I'm very, very respectful with people's time. I'm very, very respectful with not embarrassing people in front of other people. Like, there's a time and a place to give feedback.
Yeah.
If you're going to call yourself a friend, but you're going to out me in a social setting while you're drinking alcohol, again, that's not going to work. And it's happened to me before as well, where I've been attacked for something that, I had good intentions behind it, but they had an idea about it, didn't call me about it, and then outed me in public while I was at people attacking me. And then I didn't even bite back. I said, sorry, that's not actually what happened, and then this person came into the salon to have the hair done. She was like, you're not talking to me. You're not talking to me. Like, you're upset with me. And we were in the salon. I'm like, for crying out loud, like, there's people here. I said, when you finish, we'll have a chat. And, we went in the back room and she's like, you're upset with me. I said, look, I'm not upset with you. Like, if you're calling yourself a friend and you're outing me in public, like, you're not really a friend.
No way.
If you're a certain way, pick up the phone and talk to me about it. Like, I have really, really strong parameters around this subject. And I don't think I'm asking for a lot. I don't think that, the way that I communicate is so over the top. Like, I don't, people say I'm intimidating, but I really don't think. I mean, you've been friends with me for how long now?
I've lost count. Pre-COVID, so 5 years.
We give each other feedback, but it's done in such a beautiful, never attacking, never when we're not big drinkers anyway. We're really not, thank God, because who knows what would come out of our mouth. You can get really bitey. And I think this comes back into relationships as well. That's why I know I've done it with my husband. I have a couple of drinks and I start, and I have to reel it back in because I'm like, there's a time and a place to bring shit up.
Yeah.
And that is a big lesson too, because I feel like, people that are self-soothing or self-medicating or whatever they're doing, shit's going to come up at the wrong place at the wrong time. So this is an invitation to people just to really get down to understanding your triggers, understanding, communicating people. When you start to work on yourself, you really operate at a higher consciousness. You don't always get it right. I don't claim that I always get it right. I've been caught out as well when, you've seen me in action if a staff member's late or, there's things that will irk you.
And you continue to learn that. Like, even I totally resonate with that, like being nearly 50 and you do, like, to your point about you've got to work on yourself and learn what your triggers are, because I think our generation is taught to squash them and just put up with shit. The millennials don't. Like, I admire them. They just speak up, speak their mind. They don't give a shit because there'll always be a job for them out there. But we were brought up in the generation where you got to put up with it. So it's a new muscle we're flexing in terms of understanding our triggers, managing it or managing those in our circle, whether it be business or in life, on how you want to be treated.
100%. And going back to, I kind of think also with the job thing, I think it's a lot harder for them to find jobs at the moment. I don't think it is as easy. The influencer marketing has completely changed. And, how many girls we have apply for a marketing role? Like, it's hundreds.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, but I admire they're way more brazen than what, I think it goes back to schooling, like schooling life. Did the teacher really give two shits about what our thoughts were?
Never.
In a classroom, they stood at the front of the class and told us how it was going to roll, and they didn't seek opinions. But I know that schooling life now, they're very much that interconnected with students, and they develop that muscle for giving feedback and having an opinion very young. We weren't taught that. That's something I sound really old when I say it, but it's true. Our generation, we've had to learn that. That's why we get awkward about it. Well, not so much. You just got
I
to.
love it. Like with the young girls, I'm like, as much as you're learning from me, I'm actually learning from you. And I've had to really adapt. I mean, for crying out loud, like I built a team of 12 to 14, 14 girls who genuinely, there's no toxic drama here unless people
Yeah.
make it toxic. We
Yeah.
offer such a supportive environment. And feedback goes to also don't, and this is something to remember as well. Feedback isn't always bad feedback. You have to learn to give good feedback as well.
Mm.
Feedback has to be positive as well. And I think it just comes back down to communication, courage, and be candid to do both, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And keep learning about yourself as a leader. Like I'm not an advocate for squashing this. Like keep learning what your triggers are, keep practicing it. Like if you've never been comfortable in this space before, start small. Like if you're not doing performance management with your team now, start small. Start with a one-on-one situation, take them out for a coffee, or bring them in a group environment if you want to do a staff meeting and get feedback, get them talking before you're talking. No one, like, that's an invitation. Just create that culture where you start talking, and there's so much that you can learn.
So, and there's also on a different note, as business grew and I had to really figure out everyone's zone of genius, and so that I wasn't, because my time became so much more valuable. I was like, you guys need to get me off customer service so that I can implement strategies, because you're more reactive when you're busy and you're doing everything and you're working in your business, working on your business. So I think for me, the best lesson also was hiring people to do, the things that I probably wasn't good at that time. So that it gave me a very, very different scope of what I needed to implement, because then you kind of separate, you kind of leave your emotions at the door, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
that's learning about yourself, isn't it?
100%. And then implementing that in my business through people that I was like, oh my God, like this makes so much more sense to me. And it helped me become better at it, so that the busier I got, the more leadership skills that I had to instill, it just became so much more clearer, because then what I was preaching for my staff to do, I was like, I need to be doing this as well. It goes hand in hand across the board, whether you're employing someone to do it or you're doing it for yourself. Do you think also, because you deal with a lot of hair and beauty, does this come up? Is this a topic that comes up for a lot of them?
Yeah, a lot of the time. Like it's common, no matter if it's industry related, business in general. A lot of businesses employ staff for one. So it's more than just you as the individual, as the business owner, and trying to create a culture that you're comfortable with within your own business. But, and I'm always about that leading from the front. Like you've got to create the culture. Your team need to understand what your vision and your goals are, because if you are leading from behind and catching them out when they've done it, you won't have a team.
And I was just
It's like that parent-child situation where a child does something wrong, we'll say, or you don't approve of, and you tell them off. You don't want to manage a team that way. Like, don't catch them out.
And this is what I had to learn. You want to go from a savior to a leader.
Yeah.
Biggest thing, we'll finish off this episode. We hope everyone's got some key takeaways from it. But I think from my end, the biggest thing that I did that made a massive transformation in my teams, my business, my clients, it just kind of started from the top and then worked its way down. But I really worked hard at setting a really good onboarding process, so that if there's someone coming in, whether it's a client or whether it's a team member, they know exactly kind of what to expect once they're getting involved. I've set expectations, I've set the job role, I've set my company vision, mission, employment oath, what we expect, what we stand for, what we don't stand for. So then everything just goes back. If there's ever an issue, it just always goes back to that core, unify and defy. What's your movement? What's your why? And you always filter it back to that, and then it hopefully alleviates that conversation of feedback where it gets personal, because it's never personal. It's always about what we're here to do for our clients, what we're here to do for our legacy, what is the why behind why we're doing it.
Yeah. And then I think add to that the platform for either both employee and client in this, a platform for them to be able to give feedback in a comfortable space as well, like create that culture. So they're the things while I was listening to you, I was thinking about what leadership books that I could recommend. And there's been so many, but I probably have been listening to more podcasts of late than reading books. But maybe in our show notes, we might put up our favorite leadership book.
My favorite, which one mine is? Brene Brown.
Which one?
Brene Brown. I forgot the name of it.
Dare to lead.
Dare to lead.
Yeah, I love her. Like, actually, she is a really good role model, particularly for our female leaders that are listening as well. She's Brene Brown. But we'll put something in the show notes as well, and our listeners can have a look at that as well. And anyway, I hope that we've given you some little nuggets to take away with you and implement in your business. We'd love to get your feedback. Is there any last things you want to add to this, Yo?
No, I think it's that. I think don't be afraid to give feedback. We honestly value it. Deliver it in a right way. If you're not giving feedback, you're not giving us, the opportunity to make it right, because you can build the best solid relationships. I think you really show people's true character when something goes wrong, how they're willing to show up.
Yeah.
And you really, please be open to give people that chance, because you could find a surprise on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening today.
We'll catch you guys on the next one.
See you soon.